Hello! Welcome to the Livestream Happy Hour. My name is Eric Freeman. I am the host for this very special happy hour with someone who I am so excited to welcome, Hannah Stone. Hannah, welcome!
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're so thrilled to have you here. Hannah Stone is with HS Puppetworks, and we're going to get to talk a lot today about the artistry of puppetry and all the amazing creations that you're making over there at Smith Galleria at the Smith. So thank you for being here with us. We're so excited to learn more. I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of our welcomes for all of you to the live stream happy hour. This is a very special happy hour as it kicks off our 2-month journey of celebrating visual arts. Visual Arts Week will be coming up in the beginning of August, and this is our first live stream happy hour, which will happen through the course of the 2 months, celebrating the many ranges and wonders that is visual art. And what a very special form of visual art to be able to celebrate today in puppetry with Hannah. So thank you again for being with us. The live stream happy hour started just over a year and a half ago now. My goodness, when the pandemic first broke out, as a way for us to continue connecting artists with audiences. So you are our audience. Hannah is one of our artists today. So thank you for being here and helping us make that connection together. This is also a really exciting opportunity to remind you of the value and importance of the arts in our community, especially after the time that we've had making it through the pandemic together. The arts are going to be one of those things that help us come back and reunite in person, celebrate one another, celebrate life, and process this experience that we've all had together. So it's so important that we continue to invest in the arts to support this continued growth as a community. So please, we encourage all of you who are watching to please go and invest in the art of an artist today, or make a donation to an arts or civil rights organization you care very deeply about. It takes all of us coming together to support the arts and keep it alive and thriving, and if not, growing in the grand scheme of things. So thank you so much for your contributions and your support. Lane Arts might be one of those organizations, but there are so many organizations and artists valuable that are worthy of your investment and your donation. So thank you for your contribution. All right, enough from me. This isn't about me and all these wonderful ways that we can support the arts. It's about learning about some of the amazing artists in our community like Hannah. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about your artistic background and how you discovered puppetry.
Yeah, so I am, I guess, classically trained, for lack of a better word, as an artist or as a painter. So I went to, I've been painting and drawing ever since I was really, really young. Went to college for it, got my bachelor's of fine arts in studio art and focused on painting, and kind of burnt myself out. College is really intense, and it was definitely, I had to step back from it for a while. And I've always liked, kind of doing more crafty things too, like making little stuffed animals for friends and family, things like that. And so when I was, sorry, there's some noise going on in the Galleria here, but when I was I always liked making little stuffed animals and things, and I was living in Wyoming at the time, and the winters there are pretty brutal. There's a lot of time when you're stuck inside with not a lot to do, and I had always been fascinated, as most of us who grew up watching Sesame Street, and it's like, I've always wanted to know how these puppets are made. And so I was like, I've never made a puppet. Why don't I start there? So I made my first puppet. Hi, Kim. So yeah, that was kind of how it started. Actually, I think I have a picture of my first puppet. It's like the most embarrassing thing to me now, because this was just over 5 years ago, so I haven't been making puppets that long, but I think it's important to see the progress you've made. There it is in all her lumpy glory, knowing nothing about the art form and just figuring it out on my own. And here we are, almost 5 years to the day, actually. And so it's been such a journey of learning and finding other weird puppet makers out in the ethers of the internet and learning things from them. And it's been a blast.
Well, I love that. That's what an exciting way to enter into a new art form, and which is through kind of just that need to continue creating and the
Yeah.
gifting of others, and kind of finding that comfort that it sounds like you found in that environment of, like, having many an hours indoors. I come from winter states as well, so I understand
Yes.
how that works. And also, like, I just want to appreciate this beauty that is, what's her name? Lulia?
Yes, Lulia. So that was my
Lulia.
first puppet, and I think, I didn't know how to figure out like the mouth plate for it. So it's basically a sock with a glove attached to it in there. It lives in a dark closet in my house now. I'm like, it just doesn't need to see the light of day, but I can still appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and this is something you and I were talking about in our check-in meeting prior to this live stream, is like, yes, this is like a very different state of professional production that from what you're able to create now, which we'll get to see some of your more modern puppets in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what a beautiful puppet, because this is the first puppet. Lulia, had she not existed, I hope she uses she, her pronouns.
Yes.
Had she not existed, then the rest would not have existed. So what a beautiful gift that she represents. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I like showing it, even though it's embarrassing to me, because it's the start of a journey. And creating art is about the process. It's about the journey. It's not necessarily about the finished product of it. And so even if you're going to make some bad art, you got to make it, because the making it is the fun part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, happy birthday, Lulia, and happy anniversary to puppet making for you, Hannah. That's so exciting. So it sounds like you've really discovered kind of how to now hone into this craft, and your skills have definitely grown since the time of Lulia being created.
Absolutely.
But so I know that you're right there in your studio, which is so exciting that you're tuning in right there from Galleria Apple Smith, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But walk us through this process. Like, what is it like to bring a puppet to life? What are the steps that are needed there?
Yeah, so I mean, the first part is a lot of thought process for me. Before it even becomes a sketch on paper, there's a lot of just kind of tinkering with, what do I want this character to be? And so one of the ones that I've been working on is actually for a children's show that I hope to make in the future. So this is a character I made named Marley, and she's just like a adventurous young girl. And so this is the little nudie sketch here. So just kind of a rough there we go. So yeah, kind of just a layout of what I want the character to look like, but also kind of gives me a sense of what I want to start with, construction wise. How do I want this character to look when I kind of transfer this from 2-dimensional on paper to 3-dimensional as a puppet? So I got a lot of scribbles and stuff, but
yeah, looking at that picture too, you can see kind of how you're thinking about weight. I see in that kind of picture as well, the way that the arms and legs kind of have these beautiful shapes to them.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you play with shape in that kind of sketching process.
Yeah, so a lot of my work in the past has just been like these big noodly, really long, goofy arms. But I was really inspired by the work of Aardman Studios, which is out of England. They're known for Wallace and Gromit, so they're more claymation rolled, but they have these chunkier shapes to them. And I was really inspired by that. So like, how do I translate these kind of chunkier shapes into live puppets? And so that was kind of a thing that I've been struggling with in the back of my mind, because all of your materials, or at least how I work as a puppet maker, they're all flat materials. So my foam I often work with 1/2-inch foam, the kind that you would get at, Joann Fabric or an upholstery store. And so it's a matter of how do you make these shapes in a way that you can pattern them together to make three-dimensional shapes and have it not be real, like, you know, turn out all twisted and wonky looking. And so there's a lot of kind of cognition that has to go into it, and a lot of problem solving that has to happen in order for that to really get dialed in.
Yeah, so it sounds very similar to costuming or construction of clothing and clothing design. It sounds very similar too.
Oh yeah, I keep a lot of patterning books for, you know, clothing, just laying around because they're good reference material for sure. So I do a paper pattern first. So this is half of a head. This part and this part end up becoming the mouth. So going from that, tracing it onto that foam I showed you earlier, gluing that together, adding a mouth plate, which I make mine out of wood, and they've got some straps on the inside to secure the hand because you don't want to be all loosey-goosey on the inside. But you end up with something kind of like this. So, and I don't know if you can see on the inside, I've got some straps in there. So your hand can kind of get a little cinched down, and then you can get some really good puppet motions.
I love that. Well, it's really interesting too to think about, because as you're holding up that head, the shape of the head seems like it's not just a simple sphere, right? There's a more complex kind of shape that's happening.
Right.
Because heads aren't just circles, right?
Exactly.
And they can be, of course, but but to be able to play with this idea of some, like, also this different type of structure of shape also seems like a really complex shape to achieve, because it's not as simple as just a simple equation. I saw a really intense curve that's a very intentional part of the cheek that I'm hearing. So how did you discover some of those curves and shapes that you use?
So this pattern I use for a lot of my puppets. It's one that I've kind of modified over the years, because the nice thing about it is you can modify some of those things. So if I want my character to have an underbite and their jaw sticks out really far, I can alter my pattern in a way that will allow me to do that, you know, extending that lower jaw part. I can also shorten it so they have a really strong overbite, which I've done some characters that were like, I did mice, and so they had these big buck teeth that were sticking down, and so I shortened that jaw to allow for the teeth to stick down more. So yeah, it's a lot of just fiddling with it, and you know, it evolves over the years. This is a pattern I've been using for a really long time, actually. One of the first ones I did after my lumpy first puppet. So yeah, a lot of people, if you're doing a really complex shape, think, you know, Miss Piggy, a lot more kind of different shapes to it. What people will do is they will actually sculpt it out of clay, wrap it in like plastic wrap and tape, and then you can draw lines on it and carefully cut that out and lay it flat. So that's kind of how a lot of really, you know, more complicated shape development happens. So, and then you can, you know, if you're making it from a small clay maquette, you can scale it up. You can work from that same small size if you want a really tiny puppet. So there's a lot of freedom and kind of different things you can do with a lot of different skills. Puppetry isn't just sewing, it's patterning, it's construction, it's sculpting, it's all sorts of different things. I've learned how to dye my own fabric because I can never seem to get the right color at the store. So
that's amazing. Well, and also what a personalization that you get to bring into your puppetry as well, that it's not only from the materials you're able to resource, but from the materials you're able to produce too. I love hearing how it's this really this center intersection of so many different art forms. And, you know, character development is something that you mentioned. And I think when people think of puppetry, they often go immediately to puppet performance, but really puppet performance is the final step of the puppet creation process. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get to that space. And character development happens from you, but also from your players later on. But
Yeah.
tell me a little bit for you, what is your approach to developing a character? And you've heard a little bit of some of the clues of how that manifests physically, but what other ways do you see that manifesting physically?
Yeah, a lot of things like so the character that I just showed you, Marley, as I have been adding to the, sewn aspect of the head. So, whoops, yeah, there we go.
Here, let me, oh, she's beautiful.
So this is Marley's head. Eventually a body will get added there. But so it's a lot of, I think about the colors that I'm using and the materials too. I didn't want to use a lot of fur. I wanted it to be this kind of chunkier, like this chunky hair texture I've got going on. And so let me see if I can put this over on a stand here. So I was working with that, and that plays into the character, If I had gone with a more wispy look for the hair, that might have changed it. So that definitely, the materials you're using plays a big part in kind of the character development, but also little elements like these goofy teeth, So when someone is performing that character, they might give her a lisp because she's got these big teeth she's working with. And she's, kind of a rough and tumble kid, and, the kind that would like get scraped knees and, be fine with it and go out and play. So, so these are the kind of things that I think about as I'm developing and making the puppet. I feel like not only am I putting a personality into it, but it's also kind of naturally happening. I've made some puppets in the past that were a lot, it wasn't necessarily about the personality when I was going into it, but I've done a lot of things, with animals, not just, kind of more humanoid ones, but animal puppets. You can see my moose head puppet in the back here. So there's a lot of different ways that the final character develops and evolves throughout the process. And then, like you were saying, whenever someone starts using that puppet and performs with it, they impart their own spin on that character too. So they might give them a different voice than you would imagine. They might, have different movements that they would do. So I think it's a great collaboration between the puppet maker and the puppeteer. So, which I will be the first to admit, I am a horrible puppeteer. I make them and then I give them to others to explore and enjoy.
Well, that's great. I mean, because also what I hear in your design thinking is you're not just thinking about the character you're building, but thinking about the gifts you can offer to the player, right?
Absolutely,
and that's a really exciting piece of it. Did anything you want to add on that?
Oh, and not just for performers. I do a lot of puppets for, children and families. And so having it be something that is accessible to, children and adults and people who are, trained professional performers too, I think is really awesome to be able to do.
Yeah, I really loved when hearing you describe, the bucktooth, kind of like the lisp idea, and even looking at the hair and this rough and tumble kind of feel. I was like, oh yeah, this is a ragtaggy kind of character here. The hair doesn't need to be combed because it will fall where it pleases, right? And the purple nose, even that in and of itself, kind of has this like rosiness to it of like kind of that youthful kid of the big pink cheeks and rosy nose. It kind of, even though it's not necessarily colored in any particular way, that purple nose gives me that feeling of this youthful energy in and of itself. Yeah. So it's really fun to think about because I do a lot of theater too, and something this feels like a drawn parallel to is a lot of playwriting that I do. That in playwriting as well, you're writing the show, you're creating these characters, and then you hand it off. And the most exciting thing is to see what other people do with the thing that you've created, and that it's this partnership, this dance of sorts that you're able to kind of, and every person who touches it bring something slightly different to the relationship with the characters that are built. So I love hearing that kind of in the considerations always in your brain, but then the excitement of seeing what others do feels like a really exciting part of
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more in a second about the youth, because you talked about creating puppets for children, and definitely we'll spend some time with that. But I want to maybe take a quick chat about where you are currently based out of, which your gallery and where you're making art is in Galleria at the Smith. So tell us a little bit about Galleria at the Smith and what it's like being a part of that artist community.
Absolutely. So the Galleria at the Smith is it's a huge space. It's gorgeous in here. I want to say there's probably 30 to 40 spaces available. So it is it's actually the old Smith family bookstore here in town, on 13th, just by the university. And it has been converted into little 10 by 10 artist spaces. And so you can come here. It's open, crazy hours. You can come in, work in your studio space, which for me is really, really impactful, because originally I was making puppets out of my own home, and it was kind of tucked in a back bedroom. I never felt like, it was like disappearing to my lair to make puppets. It felt really like distant from anyone that would ever see my work. And so being in a space that is surrounded with other artists that are all working on different creative endeavors is really great. You kind of feed off of each other's energy. You can bounce ideas off of each other if you're really struggling with something. You can get advice from each other. So yeah, it's been really, really great working in this kind of space. And plus I can leave my mess. I don't have to feel like I have to pick everything up. I can, this is my designated space. And yeah, it's been really great. I've been here since February. I moved in here, and I've noticed, and I'm a lot more eager to get into the studio, even though it's, more out of my way than my bedroom was, which was just on the other side of the hall. It's more inspiring. It's more inviting place to be working. And so it's great. And plus I'm getting connected with the local arts community in such a big way. I've met people who are involved with New Zone Gallery. I've met people with Lane Arts Council. I'm going to butcher this acronym, the Eugene Arts and Business. Yes, thank you.
Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene.
There's a load of vowels.
Yeah.
I've been getting to know a lot more people here in Eugene, and being able to spread the joy of puppetry too.
I love it. Well, that's really, and Gallery at the Smith, what an incredibly inspiring space. And for some context too for folks, that used to be the Smith bookstore, which I don't know if that was mentioned, but so some people might remember it as that. And it's just this big open space, and just like you said, inspiring to just see all the different forms of art that surround in that space.
Absolutely. It's two stories. So there's 2 stories of studio spaces. I'm on the top floor, which is, kind of open to the first floor. So you can kind of lean over the railings and see what people are doing, which is a lot of fun just to see. They're also hoping to start offering classes, different artists who are wanting to teach people. So, maybe I'll do a puppet class one of these days and get to show people how to make puppets.
Heck yeah, that sounds amazing. Well, so we'll all be on the lookout for that for sure. But I also, one of the other things that you mentioned that was really exciting for y'all is also for ABAE, Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene. The Gallery at the Smith won an award this year for the partnership between artists and business. And so really, really exciting to see that also come into fruition there.
Absolutely. Dean, who is the owner here, massive shout out to him, because without him, making the choice to turn this into a space for the creative people in Eugene, I'd still be in my back bedroom making puppets at home. So And
Mm-hmm.
massive shout out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone who's an artist out there who's looking for a gallery space, think about Gallery at the Smith. For anyone who likes to check out and see the many artists and discover the new things happening, stop in and say hi to everyone. How exciting. Well, let's look at another one of your puppets. I've got one pulled up here, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull it onto the screen, and I'd love to hear a little bit about this guy.
Yeah, so Stu was, I'm gonna call him a third generation puppet. So if the first generation was that first lumpy one, this is the third iteration. So you can see getting a little bit better at my craft here. This guy actually went on a grand adventure. I took him all over the Western United States on a road trip and took a bunch of pictures with him everywhere. So this was down in Arizona visiting my parents. I grew up in Arizona. And so it's a lot of fun, even just, like I said, I'm not a puppeteer in any way, but taking pictures of puppets out in the real world is just so much fun to do. So I have pictures of him and I at the zoo and like in photo booths together. So yeah, that's and this one was one of my first full body puppets, meaning it has both arms, a full torso, and legs. So he's got little shoes on underneath that picture there.
So cute. Good to have, because he's around all the pricklies. So good to know that he's protected.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I love him. What a sweet dude, and I love that that kind of adventure, and thinking about puppetry again as kind of there's so many ways that they can be used, right? From like the care and development and used in the therapy kind of spaces to big stages. Broadway uses puppets, cinema uses puppets, all the way to like the very playful and fun of just like a companion, right? And photography versus movement based, live versus recorded. There's a really big range of personality that they can bring into art. Yeah,
absolutely. There's so many different applications for puppets, and this is just one form of puppetry, which is it's referred to as hand and rod. So you have one hand, and then their hands are on little sticks, so you can kind of control those as you're moving the mouth as well. But you even have, marionettes that are on strings. You have shadow puppetry. There's even people out of France that have a festival every year for these giant, 100-foot tall puppets. So yeah, there's incredible things going on in the world of puppetry.
Yeah, I love
most people didn't know about.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And yeah, Bread and Puppet Theater is another thing that I think about, which is just like a fun, huge kind of adopted, I think, from that kind of festival that was happening over there in France. There's a lot of really cool stuff. It goes well beyond Jim Henson for sure.
Yes, absolutely. We all got to give respect to the kind of the grandfather of it, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a really great comment came in from Sean. He shared, make believe is such a waning skill for kids in the rise of technology. And he mentioned it's so amazing that puppets can give that back, this idea of imagination and play. And I know that that's a really big thing that is important to you in your puppetry. And you talked a little bit earlier about creating puppets for families. So tell me a little bit about how you've seen puppetry support student learning and development, and what role have you seen puppets play?
Gosh, I get so emotional talking about it because it has such a big impact. I think a lot of people are discouraged by the amount of reliance on technology and kids are just raised by screens these days. But if you give a kid a puppet, you will watch them do whatever their brain comes up with because they have the imagination. It's in there. It's naturally in there, and they want to use it. So having something like puppetry in conjunction with this new technology that it's not going anywhere, is really important, I think, because kids need to have some sort of creative, imaginative outlet. I have seen puppets be really, really helpful in emotional development of kids too. They can learn skills like compassion and empathy. They can learn to communicate when, maybe they're really, really frustrated and they're having such a hard time because they're angry. And it can help them to process those feelings and then move on from it. So one of the things that I actually started doing during the pandemic last March, when I found myself furloughed for a while and with a whole bunch of free time on my hands, I started a blog on my puppet website specifically for kids that talked about different emotions. Not always shying away from being angry or upset, because it's important to, have the whole full range of emotions. But how can you do it in a way that is sustainable, and how do you recognize that I'm angry right now, but that happiness is inside me too? And I think puppets really can show that whole range, and it's also kind of removes the authority figure. If someone is talking to a puppet, or a little kid is talking to a puppet, they don't see the hand, they don't see the person holding it, they see the puppet. I always think it's really incredible when you see children interacting with puppets, like on Sesame Street, because they don't see any of, they're not like, what are you doing under there? They see the character. It is real to them. And so being able to have that experience is really impactful for them, learning both, developmentally as well as emotionally. I think I've seen a lot of other puppet makers who have done courses on kids camps on how to build your own puppets. And so that can be a really cool way for them to also use their imagination of I can make whatever I want, and also start using some of those creative skills and working on, how do I create this? How do I put these materials together and build something that is from my own hands? You don't get that a whole lot with technology these days.
Yeah. All the range, the incredible ways that students and young people can connect and benefit from these type of creative outlets is so it's infinite in so many ways. And the stories, that you shared, and also we have a puppetry artist on our teaching artist roster. And one of my favorite stories that to me is the reason arts education, it is the ultimate example of why art is so important for kids. There was a school that he went out to, and he did a puppetry class that was just sock puppets, very, very simple in the grand scheme of things in design, but so creative in what the kids could transform them into. And there was a girl who was in the class who was non-communicative, and she had never spoken in the classroom ever the entire time that she had been there. And she got a puppet, and the puppet went on her hand, and she just started talking, because it wasn't her talking, it was the puppet talking. It was the puppet. And everyone in there was like, we've never heard her voice before. And the level of transformative experience of the way that puppets can be this mediator between what is happening inside of us that sometimes can be so complex and so difficult to communicate, especially, adults understand that in so many ways, and sometimes don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
And imagine for young children who are trying to understand, what is this thing inside of me that I don't fully understand how to communicate outwardly. By giving this creative outlet, there are new triggers and new synapses that are able to develop in the brain to form those connections. And it is so much deeper than just, play is an important part of it. And
it is
so much deeper sometimes for certain students and for certain adults as well, because puppetry is still used in many therapy sessions around the world, and has been for a long time.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I say I make puppets from age 0 to 99, because it's not just for kids, that need to play never left. We just kind of stopped doing it. But as you get older, it's, you know, you develop this kind of ego, this personality, you get more serious. And I personally don't think it should be like that. I'm a goofball, but being able, like, I've seen people put, you know, parents put puppets on and just start going because they're playing with their kids. They're interacting with their children again instead of, you know, here's a screen. So, yeah, it's important for adults too, because you get to kind of reclaim that imaginative, childlike play that, you know, kind of gets worked out of us as we have more work and responsibilities. And so it's another reason why I love puppetry. I could go on and on and on about it, but.
Well, it sounds like there's mutual love here. And it sounds like we could keep talking forever about education, because that's something I'm very passionate about. And as many of you have heard on this happy hour. And it's lovely to see the different ways that different forms of art wake up parts of us. And I think that's something that is, I think, a great reminder right now. Like, there are infinite ways for all of us to process everything that we've experienced together over the past 2 years, and come into this environment of using creativity to digest that in whatever way we need, because everyone has different needs in this experience. And you know, there's a lot of talk about collective trauma and collective, like, mourning that we've been experiencing. There's also collective recovery and collective celebration and collective connection, right? And reconnection. And I think that art is a part of all of those steps. And it doesn't dismiss the harder things. It's a balance between all of it, I think. So anyway, well, I want to bring up another puppet that you have shared an image of. This looks like it's a couple who are just absolutely lovely. Tell us a little bit about these friends.
So, during the pandemic, actually, I was commissioned to do these puppets for a psychedelic funk rock band out of New York City. And they wanted puppets as themselves, wearing like Sergeant Pepper style jackets. And so I was like, all right, I'll take the challenge. So these guys, I think I finished them up last April or May. So they're one of my more recent projects. And it was, I mean, this was such an incredible project for me, because it was not only diving into how do I make a puppet look like actual people, because they were like self-portrait or portraits of them, I guess. So how do I make it look like them while still honoring my own style? And then also, how the heck do I make puppet clothing? So that was another huge challenge for me too. And also the another thing that was really not challenging for me, but a learning experience was these are they're African American, and so they have different skin tones, and it's really hard to find fleece in pre-dyed colors that express the range of different skin tones. And so I learned how to dye my own fabrics to be able to, you know, make it as close to the individual as possible. So that was another huge learning experience for me too. Just, you know, learning like, okay, what kind of dye do I use with this fabric? And now, you know, these are synthetic fabrics, so I got to use a different dye. And me standing in my kitchen over a pot of dye and looking like a witch. So, so yeah, this was a really fun project for me.
I love that. How did the reception go when they received them?
It was really good. They are planning on using them in one of their music videos.
Cool.
So these are hopefully going to see some screen time, which is really exciting.
I love that. Well, that's so exciting. And another really great example of how the player becomes a really important part of this, because like that's a whole nother realm from, you know, the play of creating a puppet that's just a character that can be infinite voices, right? To these characters that are going to be sub-ins, you know, thinking the Muppet movie, you know, of like the am I a Muppet or am I a man kind of moment,
yes,
which is a whole other realm of character.
Yes. I actually watched that just the other day, just because it's classic.
Brilliant cinema. Absolutely. Well, that's so exciting. I love hearing that and seeing that, and I can't wait to see the video. I hope that comes to fruition. It's really exciting.
Hopefully I will be able to pass that along.
Well, so we talked a little bit about like the Muppet movie. Of course, we talked about Jim Henson, but also there's been a lot happening with puppets lately. I think all the way back to like on Broadway with the War Horse, which had all this incredible puppetry work going on there. You mentioned on our talk earlier, like the recent show that Michelle Obama did with puppets.
Waffles and Mochi, yes.
Yeah, Waffles and Mochi. There's like so many cool things that are happening. So why do you think puppetry is having a moment right now? And what do you think helps keep puppets culturally relevant?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to our need for things that we have created with our own hands. You know, there was a while there where everything was CGI. Everything was computer made. And while that's cool, it gets it's a little removed from our own existence, our own reality. And so I think people like seeing just something that they know someone made that, and seeing how a real thing interacts with the world around them. So, you know, watching Michelle Obama interact with puppets is way cooler and way more lifelike because there's actually a puppet there. She's actually interacting with it instead of it being, you know, like a tennis ball on a stick and they'll CGI in the rest of it later. So I think that's one reason why people are, you know, why it's kind of having a moment. And I think it also goes to the fact that, you know, there's this huge generation, or, you know, kind of two generations that have grown up with Sesame Street, with Jim Henson and the Muppets, even like The Labyrinth and some of the other films in the 80s. Yeah, Fraggle Rock was a big one too. They did the remake of The Dark Crystal last year as well. And so I think there's a whole generation of us that are all like in our 30s now and are starting to like have the means to do these things. So we're like, I want to make a puppet show because that's what I grew up on and I loved it. So yeah, I think that that's one of the reasons, you know, it's kind of having a moment, as you would. And it's also, you know, it's a timeless art form. Puppetry has been around for thousands of years in some form. It's a way for us to explore parts of ourselves. And I think that it has so much to offer. Yeah,
I think about too, there are some really big moments that I think came out in Sesame Street in some recent years that I think also has helped drive this, that just pop into my brain, like the I Love My Hair music video that Sesame Street did. That was a moment of being really intentional, also reflecting of what identities have been represented in puppetry in so many years, and making sure that there is a intentional representation that they're moving toward. Which is something that's really exciting. And Sesame Street has been consistently really on the forefront, or trying to be responsive to the cultural topics that are rising up for youth to be aware of and respond to and be conscious of. Absolutely. And so I think that there's a way that learning can happen in that type of physical interaction. You talk about kids interacting with puppets. There is something that is so real in that, that is so much deeper than a cartoon can access, or so much deeper than, you know, kids knowing that they're performing with an adult can access. That kids talking to a puppet starts to transcend performance and move into like genuine captured conversation, almost documentary. It can sometimes feel like. So there's something really rich and amazing that happens there in those captured moments. And I do think about the technicality of puppetry that also has continued to evolve and develop. And, you know, like think about Big Bird or Snuffleupagus. Those are other level, technically astounding puppetry experiences. But then you think about like Dark Crystal, that found this way to have puppetry genuinely incorporated, but have CGI kind of touched on. That was just kind of almost seamlessly accessed and again, oriented towards, of course, our generation, which is like thirsty for some of that coming in. Well, I want to be conscious. There are some really amazing questions that have been popping in. So I want to get to these. And one of them, which is probably the most hard-hitting question we're going to give to you today, Hannah. Are you ready for it?
I am.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
Thank you, Emma. I said to all my friends and family, I was like, if no one asks what my favorite dinosaur is, I'm going to be really sad. No one ever asks adults what your favorite dinosaur is. It's a triceratops. I love a good triceratops. I hope she's still stuck around to hear my answer.
Hopefully it didn't take too long to get to it. But yeah, thank you, Emma, for that beautiful question. Tyrannosaurus Rex, very good to hear. Mine was always the one that has like the duckbill that was in Land Before Time. Yes. What was her name? Ducky. Loved her. Or not Ducky. There was a different one, the adult ones that had a little bit duckbill. That was always my favorite. Like horn out of the back of the head. I'm
embarrassed that I don't know my dinosaurs as well. My niece would be very disappointed with me right now.
Well, somebody tell me what that dinosaur is named, and you get bonus points in the comments. Well, we have another great question that also came in from Sean, and he said, what would you call the kind of puppets used in the Broadway production of The Lion King where they're almost prosthetics on the actors?
Yeah. Sure,
How would you describe that?
I don't know, but I love puppetry that's like that. There's a type of Japanese puppetry called bunraku, which is they're usually more tabletop with rods connected to them, and people have done really large scale ones to where like your feet are the puppet's feet and you're controlling just the top of the puppet, and so there's I'm not sure what those ones would be considered. They might even be called like live puppetry or something because are human puppetry. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that the ones that were in Warhorse, I thought mechanical elements was a part of it too, because it like those ones are similar to Lion King. Although Lion King is a little bit different construction than those ones, but yeah, that's a great example of another huge cultural moment of puppetry. Yes. Like Lion King Broadway, was like one of those moments that really was like, everyone was like, whoa, I didn't know puppets could do this, right? That it really transformed the way even people considered the limitations, because again, Jim Henson being such a king of puppetry can also dominate a little bit of what is the realm of puppetry, and Lion King helped expose people to the additional things.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
I want to acknowledge Emma did get back to us. It is the hadrosaur. Thank you so much, Emma. That is absolutely correct.
You, Emma.
I love that dinosaur. I want to get back and ask you one final question. That is the one that I ask all of our artists that come onto the live stream happy hour. Hannah, where are you finding inspiration right now?
Right now, I have been really inspired lately by, like I said, claymation, Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep. They're just like such a joy to watch. I like Shaun the Sheep a lot because there's no dialogue. It's all just sounds and kind of mumbles, which is just, I don't know, it's oddly relaxing not having to pay attention to what anyone is saying. So I'm drawing a lot of inspiration from that. There's also Leica Studios, which is up in the Portland area. They do incredible stop animation. So that's one thing that really inspires me. I'm also really inspired by the Japanese mascots that like whole cities and businesses have their own full Japanese like mascot costumes. And they are incredible. They're like, every character is different and they're all made really well, and people go out wearing these things. And so, yeah, that's one thing that I am always super inspired by. There are always these really goofy characters. But other than that, I find a lot of inspiration in folklore, different, tales that have been told for generations. I think they lend themselves really well to the kind of whimsical side of puppetry. So that's something that really has been inspiring me lately. Dinosaurs too. But
And the infinite dinosaurs of all the names.
There's so many.
To learn. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. I love hearing all these different spaces that you pull inspiration from and all the different ways that you think that you consider the possibility and realm for your artistry to be able to impact. I think it's such a rich form of visual art that has relationship to its player and to its viewer in such a dynamic way. And I can see how much heart and love you put into your pieces. So thank you for your gifts that you're giving to all
Thank you
of
so
us.
much for having me on and getting to geek out over puppets for a while. There aren't very many people. It's not like I can stop people on the side of the street. Thanks, Dad. You're late to the party with your "What's your favorite dinosaur?" there.
Oh, it's already been asked. He's gonna have to go back and rewatch the recording.
I know, yeah. Watch the live or rewatch it.
Well, thanks for tuning in, Steve. It was a triceratops. There might be some disappointment.
He's off the hook.
Conflicting opinions in there. Well, Hannah, where can people find you and how can they support you as an artist?
Yeah, so locally, stop by the Galleria at the Smith. Again, if you're an artist looking for a space to join and create, the Galleria at the Smith is it's an incredible place to hang out. As far as my website, it's www.hspuppetworks.com, and then at HS Puppetworks, all one word, on both Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much about puppetry, something that I love on the periphery, and it's really exciting to get some of these intricate knowledge.
You're gonna start doing the deep dive. You're gonna be in my puppet class.
Yeah, get that class going, and I might be there, and I might be your local competition. Watch out. Just kidding. I would never be able to step into those shoes.
Well, we'd collaborate.
That's right. There you go. Well, thank you so much. And for everyone who's still here with us or who's watching the recording, we will be back about every 2 weeks through the month of July and August, featuring different visual arts and celebration of the visual arts. And please look forward to that first week of August, where First Friday Art Walk will be back in live and action in downtown Eugene. And we'll be celebrating Visual Arts Week and all the amazing work that visual artists are doing here in our community and beyond. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.